Welcome to WP-Tonic, episode 156. Today we've got with us a prolific member of the WordPress community, Carrie Dils.
Hello.
Carrie, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. So I am based out of Fort Worth, Texas. Historically, I've done front-end web development, and over this past year or so, I have moved more into teaching others how to do web development and have their own freelance business.
I want to introduce my co-host, Jonathan Denwood. Jonathan,
terrific.
what do you
I'm
do?
not sure Carrie like that. Terrific. Well, she is the queen. Come on, John. She is the queen of Genesis. Not sure she likes that, but no, I think it sounds quite good, doesn't it, Gary? I'm the founder of WP-Tonic. I'll be offended if they called me the queen of WP-Tonic. I'm the founder. We're a WordPress maintenance service company. We're a boutique. We'll look after you like you are one of our friends.
That's right. And I'm John Locke. My business is Lockdown Design. I help blue-collar businesses with their WordPress situations, specifically local SEO and WooCommerce integrations. Diving right in, for those that don't know you yet, Carrie, tell us a little bit about your origin story in web development and how you got to where you are present day.
Sure. So I think maybe a lot of people can identify with this, that you didn't start out looking to do web development, but you find out you know how to do a little HTML, you know how to do some CSS, and all of a sudden people are hiring you and giving you money to make them websites. And when people are giving you money, you don't want to stop. So I went that path a good long while and worked for both agencies and as a freelancer, helping clients get their websites online. And then decided I was kind of done with that for a while. Took a career diversion for most of my 20s, completely unrelated. And then somebody told me about WordPress, and it piqued my curiosity to the extent that now 5 years later, I'm doing that full time. So yes, I love working with WordPress, and then I've found that it's really what's the word? I guess rewarding would be the word, but teaching other people how to do what I've already spent a career doing, it's very satisfying.
And since you've been involved in the WordPress community, especially in the last 5 or 6 years, as you've observed it from all different positions, how has the WordPress ecosystem changed overall in recent years?
It seems like, by the way, your screen is frozen on me, John. I don't. Hopefully you can hear me all right.
It's probably my Wi-Fi.
Okay, or it could be my Wi-Fi. I'm usually always throwing bad Wi-Fi at podcasts. It's my special talent that I bring to shows.
You're crystal clear, Carrie, visually and audio as well.
That's an interesting question. I think in this past, it's sort of been, some people have likened it to the Wild West, where, anyone can hang out a shingle and provide WordPress services. And there's no formal training or certification or anything of that nature. So it's really anyone who wants to offer services and products in this space can. And I think that's what I saw when I started 5 years ago. And you had to have some level of baseline knowledge to even weed out the good from the bad in terms of plugins or themes. And I still don't know that I have that down pat, but and what I've seen over this past year is kind of a consolidation of that. So fewer, if you look at framework, so Jonathan already talked about Genesis, but the theme framework landscape has narrowed down to just that top handful of players, and a lot of plugins and services are getting bought up by bigger. So GoDaddy buys Managed WP, Automatic buys WooCommerce. So I don't know, I'm probably going off the rails a little bit on your question, but it's the landscape has changed significantly in that regard. So it's well, who knows where this year will go.
Would you say the bar is getting higher for people to actually like make a full-time living in WordPress? Like you said before, you know, in the early days, it might have been the Wild West, and anybody with a little bit of HTML and CSS knowledge could, you know, carve out a living. But nowadays, is it getting a little bit, is the competition a little bit tougher? Is just the bar of knowledge that you have to have like a little bit higher?
I don't know. Like, I think when we talk about the WordPress community and all of us, or, you know, the three of us and probably everybody listening to the show is part of that, you know, bubble that we think of as the WordPress community. And within that, I think the bar has definitely been raised. But if you look outside of this bubble of us, I mean, there's somebody in some small town somewhere that's making a living building websites for local businesses or, you know, friends, family, whatnot. They don't even know there is a WordPress community. They, you know, they're existing outside that and, you know, possibly earning a living. I don't have any statistics or real life stories on that, but I don't know. I think people probably can, but I just think our perception in the WordPress community specifically is that if you want to be a big player, you've got to up your game.
I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. I think the, you know, kind of the community that we hang in is, as my friend Mario Peshev has said before, it's the 1% of the 1%. And the actual community is like so vast. It's, you know, there's like tons of people that are probably, you know, in fact, I know that like there's tons of web agencies that aren't really like involved in what we think of as the WordPress community, but they're doing just fine. So there is probably a lot of truth to that. So, you know, here's a question too. If for the people who are just starting out, entrepreneurs building a product, building a theme, or selling services around WordPress, what advice would you give them?
Ooh, find the part that you like to do and do that part, and then outsource everything else. In other words, don't be a jack of all trades, which is what I've spent most of my career doing. And, you know, when you have your own business, of course, you got to wear a lot of different hats. I mean, you can outsource maybe things like accounting, but like I realize I hate design. Design is, it is stressful to me. There's no joy in my sitting with a blank Photoshop palette forever. But give me a code editor and I'm having fun and I'm figuring things out. And once I realized that about myself, that it was okay to hire out those pieces that brought me no joy, it kind of freed me up to still be making money, involved in projects, but I was doing the things that I really love to do. So I would say figure out what those things are that you love to do. And instead of trying to learn everything there is to learn about web development and web design, pick an area of interest for you.
I think that's excellent. Yeah, don't get overwhelmed. I will say that too, like finding a focus is really a key to running a sustainable business. You know, how's that journey?
But the only thing, I'm sorry to interrupt slightly, but Carrie, there are reasons why that happens, isn't it? You know, especially when you're dealing with small local businesses, the margins are so low that for you to make any kind of living, you tend to want to do everything, or you got to do everything, basically, don't you?
Yeah, and I don't think that's a bad way to start out. I would venture to say that's where most people start out. And until you have an experience of sort of doing that whole soup to nuts, you know, start to end web project, you might not even know all the different things involved. So it does take some experimentation and experience to know what you like and don't like. But yeah, I think you're right in those smaller situations. There is no budget to hire a designer. So, you know, you're using maybe a out of the box theme or, you know, you are going after it solo.
Yeah, it's difficult, but on the other hand, I do agree with you. I think in the end, trying to be that person that does everything will lead to kind of you going semi bonkers, as we say in England. You go bonkers, wouldn't you? At some stage, I think you do have to specialize, really. Well, you don't have to, but you'd be advised to, wouldn't you? Are you going to reply to that, Carrie? Or not?
I would just nod my head in agreement. I like the word bonkers. I might use that, adopt it.
Yes, I would as well. Sorry, John, I interrupted, didn't I?
Oh, no, that's cool. You know, and what you say, like, you know, finding focus, I think for you, I look at you and I see someone who is like carved out like a lot of different revenue streams like over the years. You know, how each of those things that you've done, you know, how did each of those come about? Was that just something you set out to do, or is it just something that kind of happened?
Sure. So there's been some things that were completely unintentional and then some intentional moves as well. But you know, really blogging was the start of everything for me. And I guess it was through StudioPress, since I was using so many of their products and I was writing so many tutorials specific to their products. I learned that they had an affiliate program. And prior to this, I didn't even, the word affiliate program meant nothing to me. I didn't even know what that was. But I realized that, oh my gosh, I'm talking about these products anyways. I can use these links and, you know, get a little few pennies on the side if somebody buys that product through my link. So it's like, yay, that's a big incentive to blog right there. And realizing that affiliate revenue could actually be a significant source of revenue if I was investing my time in continuing to publish content. That was kind of how that one came about. It was like fun money on the side. Oh gosh, after that probably came the teaching. And actually, no, before that probably came the podcast. Podcasting and sponsorships, getting people to fund or underwrite the production of the podcast was, that's been another revenue stream. I can't say that one has been, it's not highly profitable. It's more of a break even sort of thing. But podcasting, and here I'm going to ramble outside of the question you asked me, but podcasting has been a really wonderful way to build my brand and funnel folks back into my website and some of the other things that I have going on online. With the teaching, you know, I guess it was maybe about 3 years ago. It was when all the value-based pricing, everybody was talking about value-based pricing this and value-based pricing that, and create passive income. And you're like, what is this mythical creature called passive income? And
it doesn't exist.
It's like the Loch Ness monster. It's
an internet fairy tale, isn't it?
It's a lot of work to make passive income. Yeah.
Which now I'm totally going to derail. But at the beginning of Pat Flynn's podcast, Smart Passive Income, he actually says,
passive income.
Work hard, work hard now so that you can sit back and enjoy the benefits later. And I think that's probably a really good definition of passive income, because you do invest a lot of work up front. But back to your question, John, teaching has been another source of revenue that I've carved out. And that's sort of a long-term play, if you will. So instead of getting all the money up front, it's, you know, a commission structure that happens over time. But the primary, the reason behind wanting to carve out those additional revenue streams kind of came out of that, I guess, era of everybody talking about value-based pricing, and realizing that I was trading my time for money and I was running out of time. So there was this cap of the income I could make. Plus, I've been doing client services. I've done this for so many years that I needed a little bit of variety in my work life. So finding doing these, pursuing some of these other avenues was a way to accomplish both of those things, to not have to rely solely on client revenue, because right, there's the ups and downs, the feast and famines that most of us experience, and finding those other revenue sources allowed me to sort of fill in those gaps and also stay interested in my work by changing things up. That was a long-winded answer.
No, that's cool.
Oh, that was short. That was short compared to some of my rambles, Carrie. God, John will testify to that when I really start the ramble.
No, and something interesting that you said, like, you know, because you're really well known for like having courses on Lynda. I mean, you're known for a lot of things, but really the one word that I think of when I think of Carrie Dils is a teacher. You teach people, you've, you know, done written tutorials, you have your courses with Lynda, even, you know, on the podcast and through various, in seminars, talks, all these various things, you're teaching people. You know, what's the value in teaching people in building a brand, building a name, and setting yourself up for success?
Everything. That's the total value. And not everybody has to, you don't have to do it so formally as to publish a course, but giving away information to other people, for one thing, it builds your authority. It establishes you as someone who knows what they're talking about. A second thing is trust. People can come to you and they're getting value from you without paying a dime. So it's kind of a no strings attached situation. And you're building this audience that at some point, you know, if you do want to offer them something that's a product that would make sense for them, they would buy from me, right? Because they trust me and they trust the quality of the stuff I do. So that's a huge value. And then the other value that I don't know if people think about, or I didn't really think about it until I started teaching formal courses, but when you teach something, you gotta know it. Like I think I know things. Like I'm working on a class right now on mobile or responsive CSS and working with SAS in Bourbon. And I use that all the time in my work. I would say, of course, yes, I know those things. But when it comes to actually like trying to script out the course and describe and explain and say the whys behind it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like you're having to learn things on a deeper level, which makes me, improves me all the way around. So I would say there's tremendous value in giving away to your audience.
No, I think that's true. Like when you teach other people, you really are teaching yourself, and you're solidifying, you know, your knowledge, because you have to do that in order to teach other people. You know, another thing you just mentioned too, you know, with the podcast, which I didn't realize that you actually started podcasting before, you know, you were doing the courses and stuff like that. I actually thought it was the other way around, but in recent,
I'd have to date check myself. It was the same year.
Oh, okay. Okay. But, you know, in recent years, you know, and I remember podcasting being kind of a thing like back in the very late 90s. And then it kind of was there in the background. And then again, you know, maybe about 10 years ago, but recently it has really, really taken off. And I think especially like in our space and in just the technology space in general, you're seeing all kinds of new podcasts. You know, what kind of, I don't know about you, but for me, like I get a lot of value out of talking to so many smart people. I think for me and Jonathan both, it's like a way to, you know, learn stuff from all these other successful, you know, smart people. But you know, what are your thoughts on just in general, just like the proliferation of, yeah, I can't talk, sorry. But you know, just the rise, the ascent of all these different, you know, WordPress podcasts in recent years.
I'm glad that you had your thesaurus going in your brain and can pick out some alternative words there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even want to attempt to say it either. Abominable.
There's always a word in there.
Yes, it's always something. You're so spot on about the value of having all these different guests on the show. And I've had a lot of people on the show that were part of my network and I already knew, but through them referring people to me to be on the podcast, it's just extended my network and introduced me to relationships that I probably would not have otherwise. And these are really smart people. So podcasting is wonderful from that perspective. So yes, if you want to go podcast, start a podcast. The barrier to entry is so low right now. The only thing that's difficult is really, and you guys know this, is doing it, like showing up when you don't feel like showing up, and and putting in the time. I don't know if it's until you do it, you don't realize the time investment that is involved to actually record, produce, publish, all of those things. I don't mean that to be a discouragement to anybody that's thinking about it, but I think if you feel like you got something to say, you've got the microphone, press the record button, and I guarantee there'll be at least one person out there that finds what you have to say interesting. It's just the longevity is been the challenging part.
Yeah, I think, and I think you're not going to make a fortune out of it. I think you can, through sponsorship and other things, make a little bit of money from it. Obviously, Pat Flynn and some of the top people do more than that, but they're like, what, at the most 1-2%, and I would say the majority. It's really hard to, how do you balance all this, really? You got your family commitments, you got the education, you got the podcast, and plus you have to do active work. Got any tips how to juggle all the balls, or none at all, really?
I just completely neglect my family and my personal fitness and the laundry. I'm just kidding.
I was starting to cry, actually.
No, it is kind of a juggling game. I actually, I have a fairly balanced, where I work from home, and I've stopped taking on client work. So I'm just working on all of, my various products, the teaching and podcasting, et cetera. I would say, oh God, I'm terrible at productivity tips, Jonathan. I don't know, just get up and do it. Even when you don't feel like it, you got to do it, but give yourself breaks. Give yourself a break. And if it's a random Wednesday afternoon and you want to go take a hike, then go take a hike and don't feel guilty about it. Like I think those investments in, making the joke about not investing in them, but in your personal well-being and in the well-being of your family, like, if you get those things right, it makes the work part easier.
Yeah, I think that's great. But do you suffer from what I suffer? When I, getting stuff done, when I look at what I've managed to get done to what I was hoping to get done, they very rarely match. But I've realised that everybody feels
Yeah.
Yes, you're quite normal.
Am I? Oh, thank you for that. The Queen of Genesis, folks, says I'm quite normal. I take that.
Well, at least in that regard, you may be bonkers in other.
Well, what to do? I'd rather be bonkers than boring. I'd be quite truthful about it. It's nothing worse than tedium, is there? And I don't think anybody says I'm tedious. No, so what did you think of WordCamp US? I thought, apart from a little bust up about sponsorship, I thought it was very excellent what Matt reported and stated. I think there were some extremely positive things about it. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I think the thing I would get most excited about is for people who that's their first WordCamp experience. Like, it's mind-blowing to walk into a room of 2,000 people that love a particular piece of software, and people are giving away t-shirts and buying your lunch and and there's just coffee pouring out of every faucet for the taking. I think it's such a wonderful experience for first timers to step into that. And then of course I'm always going to go on the community bent, right? So I spent most of my time in the quote unquote hallway track, meeting new people, catching up with old friends. And I think I made it to a total of two and a half sessions. And the half was Matt's State of the Word. And I say half because I watched it live streaming from my hotel room.
There you go.
But like, for instance, whoever I sent out to my email blast to my subscribers and said, hey, let me know if you're going to be at WordCamp. And bottom line to that was about 15 of us got together for lunch during WordCamp US. And there's a few of them I'd met in person before, but people that were complete strangers to me, but they're the people that are on the other ends of my newsletter. And to get to meet those people in real life, just so freaking cool. So yeah, I mean, just the community part itself is amazing. And then the fact that you get the free t-shirts and you can go to these sessions and get really wonderful information is sort of the icing on the cake.
I think that's great. I'd like to go on after the break about some of the things Matt said in the statement. But I think we have our break first, John. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, I think we're up against it. When we come back from our break, we're going to be talking more with Carrie Dils, the queen of Genesis. See you after the break. We're coming back from the break, and we're once more talking with Carrie Dils, three-time guest. Jonathan.
Yeah, so like I was saying, Carrie, I thought what Matt declared in his speech was positive about changing the scheduling so there's not a concrete date. What was your feelings about that part of his statement?
That was really curious to me. It concerns me in a way, like the release schedule has been off the hook this past year. I mean, they're pushing out major releases, it seems like, or they did, which was awesome because it kept, pushing the software forward. And the bright side, or the downside to that was a few, imagine, you teach some aspect of WordPress. Well, every time there's an update to WordPress, you have to go back and change some stupid screenshot in your course or whatever to match the updated version of WordPress. So there's the impact of all those updates trickles out into the community of product developers and product supporters that have to then go update their stuff to match. So the flip side of that, with now no scheduled releases, means maybe we get a break and our tutorials can stay relevant for a longer period of time. So that's the silver lining. But the part, I guess, that concerned me was Matt putting back on his coding hat and stepping back into that lead development role. And now we don't know what release cycles are going to be. It just kind of created maybe more of a shroud of mystery over it. That's not a very in-depth analysis, but that was my first takeaway from that.
No, I think it's I'm a little bit more upbeat and about the fundamental change, but on the other part, with Matt actually putting on his developer and being a lead, I've publicly stated that I feel, I just really don't see that as an effective use of his time resources, be quite truthful about it. But who am I to criticize the great Matt? And he wouldn't listen to a word I've got to say anyway, so, and rightly as well. But I would have thought time is a very precious thing for him at the present moment. But I saw it slightly more. I saw a lot of people kind of not exactly complaining, but you could see they're under stress with the set time and having to get something out. And if the kind of increase in usage goes the way that Matt states that you would like to see, that could only increase, really. So I think something had to give, really, and that's why they did it. But I might be totally wrong there. Is there anything else that you heard recently that you thought was really positive in the WordPress community and WordCamp US?
No, it's all gone to hell in a handbasket.
Gone to the dogs, has it?
No, I think overall, I was glad to see the REST API, or at least the portion that's done so far, rolled into 4.7. And then I recently saw I think it was on the Make WordPress site, that there's going to be an effort to support WP-CLI moving forward, that project won't just fall off and languish. That was, I think, great news for developers. I don't know, anything specific.
No, I think you covered the things. Another thing I would like to ask you, I think Genesis with Beaver Builder, with the we had them on the show a few weeks before Christmas and the New Year, and I really feel Beaver Builder with combining with Genesis has really re-energized the Genesis community in some ways. Would you agree with that basic statement? And I think it's a fantastic combination, Beaver Builder and Genesis, really.
I think it is it is a fantastic combination. I love both products, and I like using them together. I think it's cool that a lot of and of course, Beaver Builder is cool without Genesis too, but it does work really nicely with it. But there's been so many third parties coming out with little Beaver Builder add-ons or module additional modules that it's cool to see that. I think there's a lot of excitement around that product, and the guys behind it are so freaking amazing and like welcoming the input of anybody that wants to contribute. So it's cool.
But do you think it's kind of also re-energized interest in the Genesis framework in general and brought new people in?
That I don't know. I can't say that I've seen some talk of Beaver Builder over in like the Genesis forums, but I don't know that I've seen what you're describing. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, just means I haven't seen it with my own eyeballs.
No, you've got to say how you see it, but I feel it has really energized a lot more interest in the Genesis framework, because you're combining two really fantastic products. And one of the things about Genesis was that there was a bit of a learning curve before you could do any kind of reasonably effective customization to some extent. Learning about the filters and hook. Going to your course on linda.com for assistance, of course. But there was a bit of a learning curve, wasn't there, Carrie?
Yes, there was a huge learning curve. And I came into Genesis not really knowing WordPress. So the concept of hooks and filters, at first I just thought that was a Genesis thing. And then I realized, no, it's a WordPress thing, and Genesis has its own little subset or edition of those code snippets to maneuver around their framework. But there was definitely a learning curve, but it's like, man, once you get it, it's just like all the little puzzle pieces fall into place in your brain, and you can John, I know you develop with Genesis a lot. It just makes things go so much freaking quicker.
He doesn't actually. I probably know more about.
Oh, you do? Okay. All right. Forget that. I retract it.
No, I probably have used it more than John, actually.
John.
That's cool.
No, but so what would you say about somebody learning the Genesis, going to utilize it and wanting to utilize it as their main development tool? have you got any insights on resources apart from your great courses that can help them in that road to Genesis knowledge?
I would say, and this doesn't necessarily just apply to Genesis, but to programming in general. One, don't be afraid to break things. But two,
you're talking about clients' live sites.
not on your live site, not on your live site. Develop locally and then break things.
Right.
Don't
do what I do.
Understand, like, get curious about the code itself and what it does. So it's fine to use snippets that you find around the web or whatnot, but instead of just blindly copying and pasting, like, really seek to understand what's going on behind that. Because once you get that down, like, that's the key to unlocking everything else.
I generally think that's great. I think spending an additional 10, 15 minutes just trying to understand it a little bit more deeper in the long term, you get enormous benefit from that.
Absolutely.
Any other resources?
Any other resources? Oh,
drink, scotch, whiskey.
One of the best ways of learning for me was to take an existing theme from StudioPress, and I bought their developer Pro Pack way back during the day, so I had access to all their themes. But to take apart a theme sort of piece by piece, and, like, let's say that the theme had a parallax feature. I go digging through to find, okay, what are the components that make that parallax feature work, and how can I replicate that over in another theme? So I was almost kind of like Frankensteining themes, but I think picking them apart, like, have your code editor here, have the theme up in another window, like a live site, or a local development site. And then remove a line of code and go back to refresh your browser and see what broke. And just do that all the way down, and you'll start to understand, oh, okay, this part of the code controls that part of the page, and the dots sort of come together. So I guess same thing I said before, really is just sort of digging in and trying to understand what the code does.
Another question, there have been some people in the Genesis training environment that have contributed a lot lesson-wise, and then they've put it behind a firewall, and then a substantial part of that knowledge, you got to pay a membership. Have you been tempted to go down that path yourself?
I have toyed with the idea of putting content behind a paywall, not necessarily the Genesis tutorials, because I think like Sridhar, he's already killing it at that. I love what he's doing with that. And not that you couldn't put some competition to it, but I don't really have any interest in that. But some other sorts of content, yes, I would love to experiment with paid content. It just probably won't be code snippets.
Seems a great guy. I haven't actually spoken to him. At some stage, you might have him on the show.
That would be a good idea.
But maybe you can introduce him to us, Carrie.
I would love to.
But he got a bit of flack also. Surprise for that decision. I thought it was extremely unfair because the guy's got to make a living. He can't keep knocking out all this stuff for free and feed his family. But he did. But I think it is a bit difficult to get the right balance, isn't it, of what you're going to offer for free and what you're going to charge. Is that something you've been thinking about? You got any insights about?
Yeah, I think this goes back to the question that John asked earlier. And, when people have to trust you and know that you know what you're talking about before they're going to give you money, generally.
That's me finished.
Unless you have a killer landing page. So, I think that if you just pop up overnight with, paid tutorials and nobody knows your name, or you haven't contributed to contributed to the WordPress project or contributed to the Genesis framework, like, if people don't know who you are, they're probably not going to spend money with you. So I think there is that, and Sridhar did this beautifully. He spent at least a year, probably more, answering people in the forums, just giving away knowledge, and came to be seen as an expert. And then once he had that authority, he flipped the switch over into paid content. So I would recommend, before somebody goes that route, to actually start building an audience with free value, and then, later on monetize it. I don't know. People may disagree with that because it's not a get rich overnight scheme, but it's worked for me. Not getting rich overnight, not that part.
Well, I never got that impression. I got the impression that you want a reasonable living and to have the financial freedom so you can do the things you want to do. Would that be a correct summary?
Absolutely. There's a saying that I don't know if it even makes any sense, but do you want to live to work or work to live? And I'm definitely a work to live mentality. I don't need a mansion. I don't need an 18-car garage. There's nothing wrong with those things, and I'm sure I'd probably enjoy them if I had them. But really, I'd rather make a comfortable living, enough that if I want to not take on a project that doesn't interest me, I have the flexibility to say no. And if I want to take a week's vacation, I can do that. So I think it's just earning enough to do the things that you want to do.
Yeah, I think we've got very similar views, and I think John is the same. That's why I started WP-Tonic, and I invested over a year plus before I re-aimed it at maintenance and support, because I thought, I would have to develop a voice in the WordPress community to give me some form of authority, not or credibility. That's the word I was looking for. And it's all been downhill since, Carrie. Just shows you could be totally wrong, actually. But no. But it certainly isn't easy, is it, Carrie? You really, when you go down this path, it's a real long-term commitment, isn't it?
It is. But, like I mentioned earlier, I sort of came in through the back door. None of this was my intention. It's just I knew some HTML, I knew some CSS. I started learning WordPress and found people would pay me to do it. And then from there, all these evolutions have come about. But I didn't, wake up one day and think, I'm going to start a blog and build an audience and make affiliate revenue. Those things just sort of happen as you're, in my opinion, as you're just doing the work and doing good work, those other opportunities come about.
Well, I think we're coming to the end, folks, of the podcast. We're going to carry on the discussion, and you'll be able to see that on the WP-Tonic website and YouTube channel. We'll probably continue the discussion for another 10 minutes with Carrie, the Queen of Genesis, in this long-winded interview. That was all my fault. But no, I think Carrie's enjoyed it. So I think we'll go for a break, ending part. John, what do you reckon?
Yeah, definitely. And I want to remind people too, we're seeing, people leave reviews. We totally appreciate that. We're aiming for triple digits. So if you want to leave a detailed review on iTunes, that helps other people find this podcast. And so if you're getting value from this podcast, we appreciate it. You can also leave comments on our blog. We have that enabled now. So definitely we want to hear your feedback. And like Jonathan said, go to the corresponding episode on the website for bonus content. And with that, how can we get a hold of you, Carrie?
Twitter is probably the place I most hang out. That's at @CDils. Dils with just one L. And then over at carriedils.com is my blog and way to get in touch and all that good stuff.
Right on. And Jonathan, how do we get a hold of you?
Very similar, folks. Go to my Twitter, at Jonathan Denwood. There's only one Jonathan Denwood, and I've been a bit more proactive in talking to people on there and pushing the shows. Or you can email me at jonathan@wp-tonic.com, and or go to the website. I'm very similar to Carrie, really.
Great. And you can find me on my website. It's lockdowndesign.com. You can also find me on Twitter. Follow my Facebook page, just /lockdowndesign, all one word. And with that, want to tell you, be sure to tune in on our Saturday shows. We have roundtable discussions each Saturday. I think we're doing them at 9 a.m. And
you're gonna have to get up early, aren't you, John?
a little bit earlier, yeah, but and definitely we've got a big lineup coming this month, so be sure to tune in to our next interview episode. We've got tons of great people lined up. Jonathan's done a great job booking the show. So with that, we'll see you later. Hasta la vista.
And get your WP-Tonic medicine every week, folks. See you later.
Get your dose.
Bye. Yep.
Bonus content.
Yeah, bonus content. So, how do you feel? How do you see Genesis going in the next year? Obviously, the crew they've been concentrating on Rainmaker. I don't know how well that's going for them, really. But how do you see the Genesis? Do you think it's just going to, for the next, at least for the next 2 years, it's still going to be a major player in the WordPress development community?
I think so, and you're right that they have kind of spent more time focused on Rainmaker these past couple of years. But Genesis has made its strides too. Most notably, all the accessibility improvements that came about last year. But a little birdie has told me, and this little birdie is maddeningly. I can't say
Come
it.
on, Carrie, you can do it. You can do it.
Maddeningly?
Yes.
Okay.
There you go.
This little birdie is not specific. But the birdie said that some very exciting things were on their horizon to be announced very soon for Genesis. So that's
obviously in your crystal ball that has no connection to any of the internal team in Genesis. This would be totally hypothetical from you. Can you got any insights on what some of these amazing improvements could be?
I've been, and by the way, that was the end of my insider knowledge track. All that I know now. And this is probably why they don't tell me, because I would go blabbing about it on podcasts. But I don't know. I've wondered, as Rainmaker has gone to is a SaaS version basically of Genesis for a very target audience, if there's going to be some offering for developers to use a hosted Genesis platform. That, again, all hypothetical. I have no clue. Because I don't see any major changes coming to the software itself. So that tells me it's some sort of something that's in around the software or support around the community that's going to change. I don't know. You have pull out your thinking hat. Let's guess.
Well, one of the things that is a little bit criticised, especially the in-house themes, is that if you take a bog standard one and you don't have the budget for a really great designer, they do have a tendency to all look similar. I've heard that a lot. I tend to, depending on the price point of the budget, I was doing a job for a client, and at a certain price point, I always look at Genesis because I know it's going to be really rock stable. And I look at some third-party theme shops that provide some, especially web savvy. I've utilised Rebecca's themes quite heavily, and I've found them very suitable for these type of smaller client jobs. But that's a general criticism. Do you think there's any truth in that criticism, or do you just think it's just a bit hot area?
I think that we all are looking at the same websites. Like, we're going to the Studio Press showcase, or we're following the Genesis WP hashtag, or we're on Facebook and people are saying, hey, I launched a new Genesis site. And to you, it looks like 30 other websites, because that's the the area that you're circulating in. But if you talk about, you know, customers, the customers that are actually visiting these websites and using these websites, they're probably not hitting all of those other I just think the odds of somebody stumbling across two identical websites is probably fairly low in a real world scenario. And then even if it happens,
Doesn't
so
matter.
what?
Yeah, we'll go back to what Steve. So I thought maybe open it out to third-party developers a little bit more, and having a little bit of trying to build a kind of slightly larger theme marketplace. I suppose that's sort of thing. But I would imagine they've looked at that a lot, and in some ways they've decided not to do that in some ways. So probably it's really quite hard. The hosted solution you put forward, because obviously they've got their own hosted solution, haven't they, in as part of the parent company, haven't they? So they have got quite a lot of experience in that area, haven't they, Carrie?
Yeah, but you said something that kind of, I don't know, triggered maybe another thought. And that was, you know, what if right now Genesis is open source software. I mean, it's GPL 2+, whatever. But the actual GitHub repository is private, meaning not just anyone can contribute to that code base. But what if they opened it up for other developers? That could be a big change.
That would be interesting, wouldn't it? Because you really are getting a dynamic injection of energy into the platform, haven't you? And it's really it's not easy. Don't get me. There's a balance here, because you don't want it to the quality and all the years of reputation just to fly out the wall, do you? But so it's not easy. You got to get this balance where it doesn't end up with a total Wild West, and you just end up with some of the problems that WordPress in general has faced in quality. A lot of it is, in my opinion, a little bit unfair, and some of it is justified. So there's a balance point, isn't there? But I'm not saying it's easy, but I do think there would be some clear benefits as well. And I think the Genesis team have got the experience to probably pull it off and manage it properly, wouldn't they?
It's certainly an interesting thought. I mean, it's the same way with WordPress. Like, it's not just a free-for-all in terms of who can publish a commit to the code base. You know, there is control mechanisms in place, but like you said, it would be really bring some interesting new breath into the software if it was opened up to the community.
Yeah. The other thing is, we'll probably try and have him probably invite Alan back on the show. He was a fantastic guest. It was one of the most enjoyable interviews I had initially. And he was very gracious to come on quite early on the show. But was you surprised when they decided to go, Alan and his crew decided to go down the Rainmaker route, when you heard about it and what they were hoping to do? Did you see clearly the business logic behind it, or was you a little bit surprised, really?
Oh, I think it makes total sense. If you look at the history of Copyblogger and what they've done with, you know, building this platform around how to be sort of a one-man marketing machine. So you've got your podcast, we're teaching you how to do content marketing. We're teaching you how to build online courses through you buying our online courses, all those things. And then to have a tailor-made product that allows you to do all the things that they've been talking about. I think it made all the sense in the world for it. From the Genesis community perspective, I think there was definite disappointment that it felt like we've just sort of been backburnered while all the efforts went into Rainmaker. That's why I'm really excited to see what's coming down the pipeline, because my thought is that it's a peace offering, a way to for them to show that there's still very much value and love for the Genesis community and an interest in keeping that ongoing and alive. I don't know if any of that made sense.
No, perfectly, because I thought you were the right person to ask this. About to finish off, is that Alan's made it very, I think he's made it publicly clear that his ambitions for Rainmaker are quite considerable, that he wants to grow it into a very large publishing, and I think he stated he wants to make it go public with it, and make it one of the leading resources. I forgot what his public statement, but it's pretty obvious he wants to turn it into a very large enterprise, doesn't he?
I don't have any. No birdies have shared with me on that.
I think he's publicly stated that, actually. I've got the actual podcast that he actually talked about that. But
you'll have to throw that in the show notes.
Well, yeah, I don't think I was trying to do it. But thank you, Carrie. Like I say, thank you for coming on the show again. It's your third time. Hopefully you enjoyed the experience. You're always a blast. You laugh at my jokes. That's such a John.
You guys are fun to hang out with.
Yeah.
Right. So, like I say, I think we're going to end the show now, John, and we will be back on Saturday. We'll be having our round table discussion. We'll be having our some of our normal panel on. It's going to be about accessibility, and just keep supporting the show.
That'll actually, the accessibility will actually be the episode right before this one.
Yes, I actually paused up there.
Yeah.
Folks.
Okay.
I'm getting confused now. I need to take the I need to take the medication, don't I, John?
No, you're fine. We recorded this one out of order. It's why. So normally we just record them all linear in a linear fashion, but I think I'm influencing you, John, in a bad way, actually, because normally I can't pronounce the words. We'll see you next week, folks. All right, we'll catch you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.